So James, he's like, I'm going to test this software. And then it was just way too easy. This case was filed in 2011 on behalf of our client, James Glenn. He is a network security specialist. And at the time, he was living in Copenhagen, Denmark. Frankly, I don't think James ever decided to be a whistleblower. It sort of happened because he was really concerned about what he had been seeing. Before I get into the story, Cisco settled those allegations without admitting any liability. Everything I'm sharing is just for informational purposes. None of this is legal advice. If you need legal advice, talk to an attorney. We allege that Cisco had really serious cybersecurity vulnerabilities in their video surveillance manager software, and we filed it in federal court. And it alleged claims under the Federal False Claims Act, but also the False Claims Acts of 18 states and Washington, D.C. At the time, James was working at NetDesign. This is a Danish networking company, and they were a gold certified partner of Cisco, which meant that they were like setting up clients with Cisco's products, and they had a good relationship with Cisco, and they understood how those products work. And NetDesign had a program called Own Medicine. It's sort of like a program that encouraged penetration testing. It was like the idea is that the employees would be testing all the products that NetDesign was using and installing for its clients to identify vulnerabilities and then fix them. I think this is in September of 2008. One of James's coworkers finds a vulnerability that James reports to Cisco. Cisco issues a patch, and then they give notice of the problem in their next update. So this is a huge success. Looks great for his coworker. And James is like, I'm going to do this. He's challenging himself. I'm going to find a security flaw that's just as good and get them to fix it. And that'll be good for me, and that'll be good for NetDesign. He's like doing what he thinks he's supposed to do. So he decides to start experimenting with Cisco's Video Surveillance Manager, which I'm going to call VSM. And it's this software that Cisco sells to its clients to connect and manage video surveillance cameras through a centralized server that can be accessed remotely. So if you can imagine, you can have multiple buildings and multiple locations, and you have video streams coming from all those different places. And you want to have that all consolidated in one place, right? You want to be able to access the video streams and the data, and you can have that in one or more primary locations so that you can just keep track of everything. And so this is a software that was purchased by police departments, by airports, by school districts. This is the kind of client who is using this software for their physical security needs, right? So James, he's like, I'm going to test this software. And then it was just way too easy. And these are the allegations we make in our complaint. Serious cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And then there were 3 major consequences of those vulnerabilities. One, he found that the vulnerabilities allowed a user, no matter like what their level of restriction, to gain access to the full system, which means like they could gain access to the computer system. And because this is a system that involves like physical security cameras, if that's connected to the physical security system, then theoretically you could get access to the physical security system too. And then, so second, they also found that users could observe all the videos on the central server, and they could modify and disable video feeds. If you're imagining this heist, this is when people who are trying to steal the jewel, like cut off all the video, right? So nobody can see that they're getting in. And then third, and this is maybe the most troubling, it could let an unauthorized user get admin access, and then there would be no record that they had gotten that access. Obviously, they could make key changes to the system, but also they could obtain all the passwords of all authorized users. So these are like the serious issues that we were alleging in our complaint. And as you can imagine, it's a really big problem, especially because when you think about what this software was used for, right? This is like to help the physical security systems of police departments, of schools, of airports. And so what we allege is when you have cybersecurity vulnerabilities that could allow things like this to happen, you're totally undermining the reason why anybody would buy this software in the first place. So back to James. He is testing this software, confirming that what he's finding is legit over several weeks. And then he presents them to his supervisor in October of 2008. And at the same time, he submits a report to Cisco. They had a system called PSIRT, Product Security Incident Response Team. So he submits a report there. And over the next several months, he keeps following up with his supervisor. There's a meeting where Cisco representatives come, and he explains what his concerns are. He doesn't really hear about any updates, what's going on. He doesn't know. And then in March of 2009, he's fired. Now he's left Cisco and he's had to sign an NDA actually. And so he's really afraid. He doesn't want to tell people about his concerns because he doesn't want to violate his NDA. But he's still worried and he's still thinking about this. And eventually he confides to his sister. And she's like, oh, you have to do something about this. Is like really, really bad. And she begs him, let me report this anonymously. And he says, fine, but you have to do it anonymously. Don't tell anybody that it was for me. Now we're in September 2010. She reaches out anonymously to the FBI in LA. She reaches out to them in LA because she knows and they know that the Los Angeles airport is using this software. You know, you have to remember this is September 2010. So just 9 years before that was September 11th. So this is the concerns that are fueling them to say, hey, we have to talk. Somebody has to know about this. Somebody has to look at this and make sure it's okay. So she reports this. Then, a few months go by. All of a sudden, James gets a call out of the blue from a Los Angeles police officer who's part of the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. And he's, of course, like, excuse me, thought I was anonymous. How did this happen? Anyway, he starts sharing information with the FBI. He's just trying to be helpful. And then he starts to think, I really want to have a lawyer. I'm not sure how to navigate this. Yeah. And he says to his sister, you got me into this mess. You have to find me a lawyer. So she found Tim McCormick, who was then at a law firm called Phillips & Cohen. Tim decided to represent him. And in May 2011, they filed a lawsuit in federal court in the Western District of New York under seal. And that sort of set off this multi-state and federal investigation into the allegations in our complaint. So from May 2011 until 2019, our complaint stayed under seal and the state and federal government investigated the allegations in our complaint. And then we settled our case in 2019 for roughly $8 million. And it was the first ever False Claims Act settlement based on cybersecurity violations.